Going live. I've already gone live.
It's 11 o'clock.
Hare Krishna. I'm just waiting for Zoom connection. It's opening up and we'll be talking about Srila Prabhupada's pastimes.
Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Hare.
So today we're going to read Prabhupada's Srila Bhakti A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada's life story from the biography of Prabhupada. And the biography is available here on the internet. I'm reading from that. And I'm waiting for devotees in Mauritius to give me a signal. I think we have a little time gap. It's going to be 2 more minutes for them. It's going to be, hello, Hare Krishna. So it's going to be 2 more minutes.
It's starting in 1 minute.
1 minute? Okay. Because I'm using Restream here to broadcast on Facebook and YouTube. Oh, let me change that.
Hare Krishna, we can start like 10 minutes, 15 seconds.
15 seconds.
Sorry. Yes, you can go right away.
Okay.
I just take time to go live on Facebook.
Yeah, I'm live on Facebook for the last minute or so. It's okay. So I have chapter 24, New Jagannath Puri. Acha, you're also live streaming. From Prabhupada's. Yeah.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, Hare Krishna Prabhu,
recording in progress.
Krishna Prabhupada, on the occasion of the 125th celebration Srila Prabhupada anniversary, we would like to welcome you all to our online reading session. That is the reading of Srila Prabhupada. We humbly request all our participants to please mute yourself, to please put your camera on so that we can make the session more personal, and to please raise your virtual hand should you have any question at the end. Right. So today we are very much privileged and happy to have with us His Grace Bharsha Prabhu, who is a Srila Prabhupada disciple, and Prabhu has been serving for more than 4 decades by pushing our ISKCON movement forward, right? And he has many years of dedicated service, right? Prabhu is also a very good Hindi, Gujarati, and Sanskrit speaker. And for your birthday, if you have any birthday post on Facebook in Sanskrit that has been translated, may you live 400 autumn. Know that no doubt it is coming from Bharsha Prabhu, right? We have a lot to learn from you, Prabhu, with your sincerity, determination, and your many years of service in ISKCON. You know that Prabhu is also serving as a temple president in Baroda. We wish to describe Prabhu more, but he has been so humble not to give us any further information. Still, we know that the contribution to ISKCON knows no end, Prabhu. And today, the Mauritius Yatra is very, very happy to welcome you to our online reading of Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita on the occasion of the 125 years anniversary of Srila Prabhupada. We welcome you, Prabhu, and the screen is all yours now. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, Sri Giridhari, I know him, at least it's almost 30 years, but he looks young. I really aged in 30 years. He still looks almost the same. Because Bhakti Charu Maharaj sent me to Mauritius, to the Phoenix Temple in 1992. Both temples to speak in Hindi on Krishna Janmashtami. But I think today the reading is in English. Malecha Bhashayam Patanam Bhavishyati. What to do? The whole world is speaking English. Sanskrit, we need Rama, Ram Rajyam. We need Lord Rama to come back and establish the perfect kingdom. Okay, so I have the chapter 24 of Prabhupada's life history, which they named it Lilamrita, but one of Prabhupada's godbrothers said it should be Charitamrita, because Leela is the pastimes of the Lord. But anyway, you know, it's just like we're Hindus, but Hindu doesn't appear in Vedic literature. The word Hindu, but it is in Chaitanya Charitamrita. And Hindu means someone who follows Vedas. And Shatam Jiva Sharado Vardhamanaha, may you live for 100 autumns, that I am using to propagate Sanskrit, to greet people on their birthday on Facebook. It's from Rig Veda, it's not from me. I'm just, you know, trying to broadcast Vedic culture. So that having said, that's actually the mission of Prabhupada. He was broadcasting Vedic culture starting in 1965. That's 56 years ago, when I was 10 years old. So now you know how old I am. Yeah, Prabhupada came to the US, I was 10. The first time I saw an ISKCON devotee, I was 15. So that was 50 years ago, 1970, 51 years ago. I didn't buy the incense. It was 25 cents. I didn't have 25 cents in my pocket. I was with my father. I was still a bacha. And then later on, in 1971, I got a Back to Godhead magazine. And I read some of it, but I left that magazine at that's my grandmother's sister's house, apartment at the time. And then 72, I got a magazine and I started coming to the temple. And I moved in to ISKCON Chicago in February 1973. Served 1 year in ISKCON Chicago as a bhakta, got initiated there in December by post, and came to India February 74. So I was with Prabhupada in many places, but I was very young. When I came to India, I was 18. And, you know, I wasn't part of the inner circle of Prabhupada. I wasn't a manager. I was a fundraiser. We have a life membership program, so we used to go and enroll life members. Anyway, right now I'm president of Baroda. I'm also, after Jasomati Nandan Das left his body last October, he was the chief of ISKCON Gujarat. Nobody can replace him, but you know, my name is there and Gopal Krishna Maharaj is there. And we have appointed 2 what we call regional secretary assistants. And we made a 10-man committee. There's 23 ISKCON temples in Gujarat. By the way, there's 43 in Maharashtra. There's like 400 in India right now. India is really Hare Krishna explosion. I hope you don't mind me taking this time to explain these things. And the governing body of ISKCON in India is a legal body called the Bureau. ISKCON India Governing Council, which is known as the Bureau, and I'm somehow or other the vice chairman. Gopal Krishna Maharaj is the chairman, and Shankadari Das just became the secretary a couple days ago, and Braja Hari Prabhu came back as the treasurer. But there are 19 members of the Bureau: Jayapataka Maharaj, Gopal Krishna Maharaj, Radhanath Maharaj, Lokanath Maharaj, Banu Swami, Revati Raman Prabhu. They're all GBC members. I'm not a GBC member. But India is bigger than the rest of the world these days in everything. And it's natural because this is from India. Prabhupada was from India. And in the Bhagavatam 5:19-21, the demigods are praying to be born in India. So there you go. Srimad Bhagavatam, Vedic literature glorifies Bharata. All the holy places are in Bharata. For as far as Prabhupada, his office was Bombay, his residence was Vrindavan, and his place of worship was Mayapur. And as you all know, Grand Temple is coming up in Mayapur, TOP, by the grace of Ambarish Prabhu, who was inspired by Prabhupada. So having said all that, I can start reading. So it says here, this was, of course, written by Satsvarup Maharaj, and he had a team of researchers. I also did some research in Surat. Prabhupada visited Surat for 3 weeks in December 1970 and first 4 days of 1971. So in 1980, 41 years ago, I went around and collected pictures and we interviewed people. One of Satsvarup Maharaj's secretaries was Baladev Vidyabhushan, American devotee, his disciple. I'm not exactly sure where he is now, but he's like my age, but he joined a little later. And we did a lot of research, and there was a big section of the Prabhupada Lilamrita talks about the Surat program. Anyway, better start reading now. Srila Prabhupada put on a sweater over his turtleneck jersey. You know what is a turtleneck jersey? I don't know. Yeah, it covers your neck and it kind of rolls around, right? Everybody knows. Because it's not popular now. You won't see people with turtlenecks in these days, not much, out of fashion. So wrapped his chadar around his shoulders and left his apartment, accompanied by a few disciples. Acha, the chapter is New Jagannath Puri, and that's San Francisco, where Prabhupada had the first Rath Yatra in the West. And it became, there are pictures of, I'm not sure, 75 or 76, I think 74 or 75. Huge Rath Yatra in San Francisco. I've personally attended twice, 2002, which seems like yesterday, but it's 19 years ago. And I attended in 2017, 4 years ago. It's in the Golden Gate Park. Only people who are interested in Rath Yatra come. Many Indians live in San Francisco area, so they also, some of them participate. Anyway, this is a description of 66, 67, I think, not 66, 1967. So that's 53 years ago, right? Or 54 years ago. So the weather was beautiful, and the blue cloudless sky reminded him of India. An hour before, he had sent devotees ahead to start a kirtan, and now one of the girls had come running back to him, excitedly knocking on his door and announcing, "Swamiji, there are so many people." So clay mridangas he had ordered many months ago from Calcutta had recently arrived. So, I mean, in those days, things were sent by boat. Nowadays, there's no more, small cargo doesn't go by boat anymore. Everything is by air. So many months ago, it took months for these mridangas to come. Today would be one of the first times he would play a genuine clay mridanga in America. The boys and girls would like it. He had arranged for the drums to be wrapped in cloth and had cautioned the boys to be careful because the clay drums broke easily. The walk to the park from his apartment was short, and as usual, Prabhupada walked faster than his young followers. They walked down Frederick Street to Stanyan, where they turned the corner at the donut shop, and then in brackets, it says that the donut shop was frequented by the Hells Angels and still sometimes visited by certain devotees. Do you know what is the Hells Angels? I don't know if everybody here listening. Let's see, we have 23 on Zoom, and I don't know how many are on Facebook and WhatsApp. And you also have Facebook and YouTube. And you also have Facebook and YouTube going on. So the Hells Angels was a motorcycle gang. And they used to have these jackets and they were written on the back, Hells Angels. So the term Hells Angels is a kind of an oxymoron. Oxymoron means a contradictory, because in hell, how can there be an angel? This is of course, Christian concept from Christianity, not from Vedic literature. Vedic literature, you can say there is a Naraka and there's a Gandharva Loka. So you would say Narakas Gandharvas. I guess that's a kind of a translation, but the Gandharvas are not in the Naraka. Anyway, so these are colloquialisms. The author assumes that those who are reading the book will understand what he's writing, but he was writing for a particular time, and people around the world may not. What are the Hells Angels? They may not understand. They would have to do research. Frequented by Hells Angels. That means the motorcycle gang guys, they used to go and eat in this particular, now a donut shop. Donuts are well known all over the world, I guess. It's a Western pastry. You have them in Mauritius. Okay. And on Stanyan is the name of a street. He didn't use Frederick Street, but Stanyan. He didn't say Stanyan. They hurried past the park of Kezar Stadium. The stadium itself. So Kezar Stadium was a very big stadium in San Francisco where professional sports like American football, I don't know if you're aware of this, American football games. The Kezar Stadium is gone. There's no more Kezar Stadium. I think it was demolished. And the football games are no longer played in San Francisco. They moved to San Jose, Silicon Valley. So the Kezar Stadium was a massive stadium, big landmark in the city of San Francisco in those days. At the Wallen Street intersection, Prabhupada continued his rapid stride without stopping or even bothering to look at the light. One of the boys caught his arm. "Wait, Swamiji, the light." But Prabhupada darted across the street. So now light, that's another colloquial English, American English expression. It means the traffic signal, right? In India, we say traffic signal. I don't know what you say in Mauritius, but if there's a junction, what is it, Choraha, and there's a traffic signal in the United States, they say the light. There you go. You have to know these, otherwise it's yeah, but hard to understand. If you say light, then you may think, well, what is the light? It's a traffic signal, right? Okay. As they continued down Stanton toward Haight Street, the park appeared on the right. So the park is called Golden Gate Park, where they have the Rath Yatra. They entered, walking past a duck pond with a fountain and a willow tree on its center island. They walked past tall redwoods and eucalyptus trees, which lent fragrance to the surrounding area. There were also maple, oak, and ash trees and flowering shrubs like azaleas. Prabhupada said that the park resembled parks in Bombay and that the city was like a holy place because it was later named after Saint Francis. Saint Francis in Spanish, San Francisco. Francis is Francisco, and Saint, Santa, right? And Santa, son, like that. Anyway, Prabhupada was deeply religious. So he went to Scottish Churches College. So he knew some background of Christianity, because in those days, before the independence of India, the British were ruling India, and they were Christians, and they were trying to propagate Christianity in different ways, subtle and gross. Oh, I just take a little water with your permission. It's give me a 1 minute break here. They entered a 50-foot long tunnel with artificial stalactites hanging from the ceiling and came out onto a path heavily shaded by trees on other side. Now, what's a stalactite? Do you know? It's a pointy rock hanging from a, that's attached to the ceiling of a cave, usually. Just ahead was a meadow, the meadow, covered with tiny daisies. Daisies are flowers, and clover, and encircled by redwood and eucalyptus trees. Prabhupada could hear the chanting, the kartals, and the booming of the timpani. Timpani is a big cymbal, like, wampers. These wampers, that's called a timpani. As he entered the meadow, I think in Hindi is Maidan, open area, right? He saw a sloping hill dotted with hundreds of young people, sitting, lying, lounging, smoking, throwing frisbees, or walking around, and in the meadow below the hill was his kirtan. The meadow was a popular place. People walked through it on the way to the zoo or the tennis courts. But today, many passers-by had stopped and were listening in a group about 200 feet from the kirtan. Closer in, about 50 feet from the kirtan, was another group listening more intently. And then there was the kirtan party itself, Prabhupada's disciples, and dozens of young hippies sitting tightly together and chanting. The others were standing nearby, clapping and swaying to the rhythm of the drum and the kartals. Flags decorated the kirtan area. 3 feet by 4 feet, they had been made by devotees, and each bore the symbol of a different religion. A bright red flag with a yellow star and the crescent moon of Islam flew from a 10-foot bamboo pole stuck into the earth. Beside it waved a pale blue flag with a dark blue Star of David in the center. And beside that, a yellow flag bore the Sanskrit Omkara, Om. Prabhupada's disciples, with their long hair and casual clothes, were indistinguishable from the other young dancers and singers, except for the strands of large red chanting beads around their necks. Some of the devotees danced with arms upraised against the background of uninterrupted blue sky. Others played instruments. The kartals and timpani were there. Hayagriva had brought his cornet. Cornet is a, like a clarinet, I think, like a shehnai type of instrument. And there were other instruments brought by devotees and hippies. Little children were taking part. Even a stray dog pranced in the innermost circle of the kirtan party. On Sundays, the meadow beneath Hippie Hill was always an open show, and today the kirtan was the featured attraction. So hippies was a term used to describe young people who are today called, they're not called hippies anymore, they're called baby boomers. Because after World War II, there was a baby boom. And by 1967, these people had, they were between 20 and 30 years of age. So they were there, this hippie movement. It did not have one leader. It was a mass of young people all over the United States who were under different influences. And Prabhupada became an influence. Let's put it like that. But Prabhupada's message was not so popular because intoxication was one of the main principles of being a hippie. Being a hippie meant taking ganja and other mind-altering drugs. What are they called? Psychotropic drugs. So LSD, I don't know if you've heard of this LSD. That was the most popular at the time. Now there are so many, chemicals. People take it and they feel happy and they think it's okay, but it's intoxication. So in the 1960s, there was also a dissatisfaction. Oh, I forgot to put this on. There was a dissatisfaction with the United States involvement in Vietnam. And there was a protest. Many American soldiers were dying in Vietnam in large numbers. I think totally 50,000 soldiers died. And there was a large protest that went all over the United States against this war. And those protests went on for years. And the story is that anyway, background story, has nothing to do with Prabhupada, excuse me. But when John F. Kennedy was the president of the United States, he sent some, military advisors to this Vietnam, which is not far from India. It's called Indochina. It's where you have influence from India and China. So when he was killed, the fellow who became president was Lyndon Baines Johnson, became president of the United States. And suddenly he escalated the war and sent thousands of soldiers to fight in Vietnam. And the United States had a powerful military, but they couldn't conquer these, communist Vietnamese. They lost the battle. And much later, there was a peace agreement signed in the United States, 1972. But the discontent among young people started around 65 and went till 1972. This affected millions of young people, and there was a forcible conscription into the army. But because this war was unpopular, it became very unpopular to join the army. But the people were, since 1972, United States Army is a volunteer army, like Indian Army, if you know anything about India. There's no forcible conscription. But in small countries, not Mauritius, but say Israel, or I know in some Eastern European countries, you have to go to the military. But Russia and China is voluntary. Anyway, so this was the time when the youth of the United States, many became what they called hippies. So they were unhappy with the war. They were taking intoxication, and they thought that this intoxication would lead to enlightenment. And Prabhupada's message was, no, it won't lead to enlightenment. It leads to illusion. Intoxication is illusion. So let me tell you the frank truth, that the vast majority of the hippies, they didn't listen to Prabhupada. But some listened. And those who listened spread ISKCON all over the world. And Prabhupada had a intense desire to distribute Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. And that, by the enthusiasm of his followers, it's spreading. The Gita and the Bhagavatam are spreading all over the world. So, back to the story. So this was in the beginning of his US preaching, right? He had only the 3 volumes of Srimad Bhagavatam that he printed in Delhi. He brought with him and started his movement. So Prabhupada joined the kirtan. We read the description of the kirtan. Now Prabhupada joined the kirtan, walking up suddenly to the surprise and delight of the devotees. He sat down and began playing the mridanga and leading the singing in a loud voice. Mukunda, now, testimony from Mukunda Maharaj, who at that time was Mukunda. Quote, although we heard Swamiji play different drums before, and some of us had played along with him, when he played the clay mridanga from India, it was a completely different feeling. The feeling it created was akin to seeing an old friend after many, many years. It was so right and so natural. It was the very thing our kirtans had been missing. And it increased our feelings of ecstasy many times over. Obviously, Swamiji was in greater ecstasy than ever. You could sense by the way he held the drum, by the ease with which he brought out its intricate rhythms to control the kirtan, that his drum was like a long-lost friend in him. Swamiji playing that drum was the talk of the community. Now we knew what kirtan really was, how it was supposed to sound, what it was really like. I don't know. Maya is attacking me. Excuse me for a moment here. Okay. Prabhupada was the center of attraction. Now that's Mukunda Maharaj's statement is over. So now Prabhupada was the center of attraction. Even his age and dress made him prominent, whereas the others in the park were mostly young people dressed in denim. Denims is jeans, or various hippie costumes. Prabhupada was 70 and distinctly dressed in saffron robes. And the way the devotees had all cheered and bowed before him were now looking at him so lovingly, caused onlookers to regard him with curiosity and respect. As soon as he sat down, some young children had gathered in close to him. He had smiled at them, deftly playing the mridanga, enthralling and enthralling and entertaining them with his playing. Now, quote from Govinda Dasi, with Swamiji's arrival, there was a mastery and an authority about the whole kirtan that was absent before. We were no longer kids in San Francisco chanting Hare Krishna. Now we had historical depth and meaning. Now the kirtan had credentials. His presence established the ancient historical quality of the chanting. When Swamiji came, the whole disciplic succession came. Any questions? Should we have interactive session here, or I just keep reading? Anybody want to guide me? Yeah.
There is if anyone would like to share anything or have any query or question, please raise your virtual hand. You will be called upon to interact with Prabhu.
Yeah, there's
if we can continue the reading.
Yeah, okay. If there's no questions, I'll go on. Okay, after an hour of chanting, right? Prabhupada walked. He came into kirtan that was already going on, and he joined that kirtan for an hour. Prabhupada stopped the kirtan and addressed the crowd. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This is the sound vibration, and it is to be understood that the sound vibration is transcendental. And because it is transcendental vibration, therefore it appeals to everyone, even without understanding the language or the sound. This is the beauty. Even children respond to it. After speaking 5 minutes, Prabhupada began the kirtan again. One woman with long uncombed red hair, began dancing back and forth and chanting, her baby in her arms. A man and a woman sitting side by side played together on the heads of a pair of bongos. Bongo is a drum. It's two small drums that are attached by wood. They're wooden drums with skin heads, and you beat down like that. You know, in ISKCON now, nobody uses a bongo anymore because everyone has the mridangas from Bengal. So bongo is a thing of the past. Subal, in tight corduroy pants and a flowing white shirt, danced in a semblance of the step Swamiji had shown him, although Subala looked somewhat like an American Indian dancer. American Indian dancer. A suave-looking fellow, a little girl, no more than 4 years old, sat cross-legged, playing kartals and chanting seriously. A suave-looking fellow, wearing a vest and a round sunglasses, played castanets against his palm. Boy, even I don't know what a castanet is. Can I look it up? What's a castanet? Castanet. It's a small concave pieces of wood, ivory, or plastic joined by pairs of cord and clicked together by the fingers as a rhythmic accompaniment to Spanish dancing. That's the translation in the dictionary. So small wooden type of kartal that make click click type of noise, I think. Yeah, so a suave-looking fellow wearing a vest. A suave-looking fellow wearing a vest and round sunglasses played castanets against his palm. Ravindra Swarup sat rocking back and forth as he played the drone on the harmonium. So this Ravindra Swarup is not the same Philadelphia Ravindra Swarup. By the way, for those of you who have heard of the Philadelphia, ex-president of Philadelphia, this is a different Ravindra Swarup. Beside him, Hayagriva chanted forcefully, his head and upper body lunging forward and back. His long hair and beard jutting out wildly, while a nearby girl stood with her right arm around one boy and her left arm around another, all three of them swaying back and forth, singing with peaceful, blissful smiles, enjoying the chanting and the sunshine. One girl sat silently meditating, while beside her a girl danced provocatively, and a 5-year-old sat beside the dancing girl played with 2 balloons. Ajay. Prabhupada set his mridanga aside and stood up, playing kartals and swaying among the dancers, his feet moving in a stately measure. A big black man danced nearby, facing his white girlfriend, both of them moving as if they were at Avalon. Avalon, does anybody know what Avalon is here? Avalon is a hall where they used to have dancing and musical concerts in San Francisco. I never went there, but the girl shook her body and head in wild abandon. Sorry here. The girl shook her body in wild head in wild abandon, and her long straight hair completely covered her face. Bright blonde Nandarani stood on Prabhupada's right, playing kartals. Sometimes Prabhupada stopped singing and simply observed the scene, his mouth closed in a stern yet sublimely tolerant expression. Some of the young people joined hands, formed a circle, and began to dance around and around in front of Swamiji. Then they encircled him, and as he looked on, still swaying and now clapping solemnly, they danced around him hand in hand, jumping and wriggling and chanting Hare Krishna. The soft pink hue of his khadi robes contrasting with the pied dress of the hippies. Swamiji looked unusual and wonderful, watching and solemnly watching. Swamiji looked unusual and wonderful, watching and solemnly sanctioning the kirtan performance. Okay. The dancing was free form and sensuous, but that was the way these young people expressed their feelings. Through their bodies, they bounced and bounded into the air. Sometimes the circle of I'm sorry. I apologize here. Yeah, it's becoming difficult to read. Sometimes the circles of dancers would break and become a single line, weaving in and out among the people sitting on the grass, in and out among the silk flags. A muscular boy held the hand of a girl wearing long dark braids and a black headband in American Indian style. American Indians means in India, red Indians. At the end of the line, a boy held a girl's hand with his left hand, while with his right he held a wooden recorder to his mouth and tooted as he weaved in and out of the crowd. See, recorder doesn't mean a machine, it meant a wooden instrument. Prabhupada became tired and sat beside the brass bottom timpani, singing and playing kartals. He sat grave and straight like an ancient saint. Nearby, a blonde woman sat in a yogic posture, bending her body forward until her forehead touched the ground again and again, in supplication or exhibition. Another girl stretched out her hands, imploring in a mixed expression of inner feelings, physical and spiritual, while her golden earrings jangled. A Mexican in a checkered shirt beat a tom-tom. Wow. What is a tom-tom? That's another, boy, I think it's tom-tom. A medium-sized cylindrical drum used in jazz bands. So a tom-tom is a drum. A white sheepdog wandered from person to person. So this is a description of, the kirtan before the Rath Yatra. Swamiji looked kind and amused. The hippies found him beautiful. He remained gentlemanly, aloof amidst the twisting, shaking, rocking, dancing young people. Amid their most sensual movements, he appeared not at all like them, for he moved in a stately, elderly way. As he surveyed the activities in the meadow, he seemed deeply pleased to see the ring of dancers singing all around him, chanting Hare Krishna. For Swamiji, the main thing was that the chanting was going on and on. Dressed in his... Wow. I have to take a throat lozenge here. Dressed in his saffron cloth that seemed to change colors subtly in the fading afternoon sunlight, he watched in a kindly, fatherly way, not imposing any restraint, but simply inviting everyone to chant Hare Krishna. 25-year-old Linda Katz was walking in the park when she heard the sound of the kirtan. In the crowd of hundreds of people gathered around the scene, Linda found it easy to go close without becoming conspicuous. She felt comfortable watching and even thought of joining the fun. Then she noticed the Swami leading the singing. She was startled, even a little frightened, having never before seen anyone so grave. He was striking, and the dancers appeared beautiful to her. A girl with arms upraised and eyes closed seemed to be swinging like a tree in the wind. One of the men was tall and attractive, with golden curly hair, and Linda saw a boy she knew from college in New York. A crazy boy who always wore a shocking pink wool cap. Linda had arrived in San Francisco from New York only a few days ago. She had no plans except to study under a certain dance teacher and maybe get into some of the exciting things she had heard were going on in Haight-Ashbury. As a graduate student in ancient Greek literature at Columbia University, Linda had become attracted to Socrates, who had lived and died for truth. But she hadn't found any of her professors to be at all like Socrates. She had envisioned herself living a life of truth by pursuing scholarship, but it had become dry. The ancient civilization of Greece was a dead idea, not a living truth. It didn't touch the heart. She had been aching for a new, exciting experience, and she was ready to throw herself into San Francisco's hippie society. She had come here alone, giving up her fashionable clothes and donning bell-bottoms and old shirts. Boy, does anybody here know what is a bell-bottom? That's a question. It's a pant, and at the bottom of the pant, it kind of flares out. It's not a straight pant, but it goes like a bell. So it's called a bell-bottom. So where was I? But because she wanted to be serious, she felt awkward trying to fit in with the hippies. She felt that to belong, she was supposed to wipe the serious look off her face and just smile mindlessly. So even in the society of San Francisco's hippies, she remained unsatisfied and lost. With your permission. How am I doing on the time?
It's good, Prabhu. I think Ajay Chaitanya Prabhu has raised his hand.
Acha. Sure,
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, that will break the monotony of it's a bit monotonous to read, only read.
Yeah. Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Welcome to Mauritius.
Thank you.
Virtually.
Virtually,
Nice
yeah.
to be listening to you. But at the same time, when we mentioned about Shubal here, he's the one who took sannyas afterwards. Shubal.
Right, right. Correct. He was one of the first. He was one of the first sannyasis. I mean, Prabhupada gave sannyas to a number of young Westerners. And the idea for them taking sannyas, of course, sannyas means renunciation, but he needed leaders. And Prabhupada called it a battlefield commission. I don't know if you're aware of that, but he used this analogy that when there's a big war and there's not enough trained military officers, they take some, more prominent people and make them officers. Just like that, like teachers, lawyers, more intelligent type of intelligentsia. And, the sannyasis were the officers of Prabhupada's preaching movement. They were to lead the preaching. Yeah, Subal. I'm not sure if he's still alive, but he left Krishna consciousness.
Oh, I see.
I came across some years ago, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, I can't remember, some, things that he wrote on the internet about himself, kind of an autobiography. And he left ISKCON a long, long time ago.
Oh, I see.
And he was a Christian again, but his type of hippie Christianity, if you want to call it that. The people that were influenced by this hippie, try anything once. There were so many liberal ideas that the hippies had. So, yeah, he was in the United States, as far as I recall. The last place was Hawaii, Hawaiian Islands. But, he's not seen in ISKCON. He didn't come back. And he was eating non-veg food. He wrote that. That was written. But I didn't save all those things. I read it on the internet. I don't know if it's still on the internet. Some things come, they're there, and then they go away,
Yeah.
But it's an unfortunate fact that he left.
May I also ask a question?
Pardon?
May I also ask a question?
Sure, go ahead, please.
How is it that you came to learn Sanskrit, Gujarati, Hindi?
Well, I came to Hyderabad, where theoretically the language is Telugu. But because of this Muslim ruler, the Nizam, the language of communication was Hindi. They call it Urdu, but it's the Urdu and in Pakistan and the Hindi in India is the same on the ground. But if you watch Pakistan TV news, then you won't understand what they're saying. They use all Arabic and Persian words. But the common man, it's the same language. It's mostly Sanskrit words, but there are some Arabic and Persian words in what they call Hindi. Now, what happened when I came to Hyderabad, the construction of a temple was underway and they needed money. And so I became a fundraiser. There was no plan. ISKCON was not well organized. I'm telling the truth. I came to Hyderabad to travel with a sannyasi who's still alive, but he's no longer a sannyasi, a Chutananda. And later on I traveled and he did preaching programs and I went for life member enrollment. I went to businessmen to make them life members. So this was, the tour started in September of 1974. September, October, November, December, and through January. So like 5 months, I traveled with him. He would do public lectures in the evenings. Not every evening, but wherever we were, we went to different places and that was the focus. But in those few days that we were in Nagpur. In Nagpur, I didn't go for life membership, but in Visakhapatnam, from Nagpur, we drove, Nagpur is in the center of India and Visakhapatnam is on the east coast. So it was quite a long drive. We went overnight and we drove the whole night and we went straight to Visakhapatnam from Nagpur. You go through some tribal areas actually on that route. So Visakhapatnam, Kakinada, Rajamundry, Andhra coastal cities, Guntur and Vijayawada. We had programs. And he would have 5 days program in each place, Achutananda. And he was a good lecturer. Previous to that, he was lecturing every day in Hyderabad to 300 people in the evenings. He would play a tambura. I would play the mridanga. Someone else would play kartals and he would sing different bhajans. And after 10, 15, 20 minutes of bhajans, he would give a 1-hour lecture. And there would be pin drop silence among the 300. And this was in a shed. It wasn't a regular building, but it was a temporary structure. And that's where the temple of the deities Radha, Madan, Mohan were there already. Now there's a temple built. Well, I was there with Prabhupada, Krishna Janmashtami, 1976. It was inaugurated. The chief minister of Andhra Pradesh, now Andhra Pradesh was broken into 2 states, 6, 7 years back now. Andhra and Telangana. So Hyderabad is in Telangana. So because sorry, I'm giving you background, but because I was in Hyderabad and because for life members in Hyderabad, the businessmen were Hindi speakers, not Telugu speakers. Okay. When I went traveling, then we were in towns where there were a few Hindi speakers and they were also business community, this Rajasthani business community, they're called Marwaris, which
you well?
No, that's on WhatsApp.
We can share you the one we are recording.
Oh, it's going on. It's going on. Okay. Yeah. Yes, Mataji. What was that?
So we can share the one we are recording in Mauritius with you, if needed.
Share the
live.
No, I have my own that's going on. This will be going on in different places. So yeah, I'm doing it from my iPhone. Okay. The picture went away, but the broadcast was still going on apparently. Anyway, so when I came back to Hyderabad, again, I started going to enroll life members. So there are these Rajasthanis who had settled in Hyderabad actually for generations. But some of them had, you find these Rajasthani businessmen all over India, but you find more of them in Maharashtra and Hyderabad, Bangalore, Chennai. in South India. And then in villages of South, there are Jain Rajasthanis, Rajasthani Jains. The Agarwals are not Jains, Agarwals and Maheshwaris, but there are Oswal. There are many communities in Rajasthan who were business communities. So you had to speak with them in Hindi. You had to speak with them in Hindi. So by the middle of 1975, I was able to talk in Hindi. Just by speaking. In the beginning of 75, not in the very beginning, I can't remember exactly, March, April, 3 foreign devotees sat down with one elderly gentleman. He was 75 plus, and he taught us the Devanagari Lipi in Hyderabad. He was from UP, and he taught us in 3 weeks reading and writing Devanagari. But the language, the spoken language, I was in the process of picking it up. And by the time I went to Nepal in, I guess it was late July, early August of 1975. And I was sent there with only 100 rupees in my pocket and the one-way airplane ticket by the president of the Delhi temple. And I didn't know where to go. There was no ISKCON in Kathmandu, but it was out of India. So my visa had expired or was expiring. And I came to Delhi to meet the Home Minister of India because the member of parliament from Hyderabad was a life member. And he said, I'll take you to the Home Minister and we'll extend your visa. But it's a long story. I was sent to Kathmandu, so I went out of India. So I didn't know where to go. But there was a Marwari Seva Samiti. Rajasthani businessmen had a dharmashala.
Okay.
5 rupees for a room. The room was in a terrible condition, but there was a mosquito net that saved my life. And the room was, that was it. There was a bed with a mosquito net and you couldn't move. So I used to go out for long walks and I had no books with me. So in the road, I met one Marwari life member. He said, he came up to me, I'm a life member of ISKCON. And he gave me 100 rupees and a Krishna book. And then later on, I met some hippie type of guy who had 3-4 Srimad Bhagavatams, brand new ones. And he gave me those Bhagavatams. So I was reading for hours in the room. And I was walking for hours around Kathmandu. And I was there for more than a month, 5 weeks. And finally, that hippie bought me a ticket. They wouldn't give me a visa to come back to India. The people at the Indian embassy were not kind. They said, show us a ticket going out of India. We'll give you a 2 weeks transit visa. So that hippie guy pulled out a couple $100 Canadian. He was from Canada. And he bought me a ticket, Calcutta to Kuala Lumpur. So with that ticket, I got the 2-week visa and I went back to Hyderabad and I saw Prabhupada in Vrindavan on the way back. He asked me, where are you coming from? I said, Kathmandu. And then later on there was a talk, but that's a separate pastime. So yeah, then Gujarati in 1979, after Prabhupada disappeared, I came to Gujarat because I knew Jasomati Nandan Prabhu from Chicago. And Gujarati Lipi is 50% Devanagari and 50% is a little different. So it's easy to, just by looking at signs, I was able to pick it up. But the spoken language, I'm still learning. I went, when I was in Ahmedabad in 1979, I went for Hindi lessons without payment. There was a college teacher, very nice guy, Gupta. He wasn't a Gujarati, he was a native Hindi speaker. So I polished up Hindi a little more. My Hindi is still not perfect. And there's still words I'm learning, even English words, So I learned to converse in Gujarati over the years, living in Gujarat and everybody speaking. So you start speaking, and it's similar to Hindi, it's similar to Bengali even. And then I was interested in Sanskrit. And I met, he came with me to Mauritius in 2009, Acharya Sanskrit Ananda. That was for the opening of, Mukta Purush Prabhu's temple. That was, when was that? November 2009.
Okay.
Unfortunately, he created a bad impression on Mukta Purush. And so he was never invited back. Anyway, he taught me in 1 week in 1988. By speaking, he had a spoken method. And that's really how you learn any language. You have to be, first of all, you have to be really interested to learn the language. That ruchi, the taste.
Yeah.
And second, you have to hear and repeat, and you have to learn the words in any language, whether it's Russian, Chinese. Chinese is also many different dialects. Like in India, there are many languages. They say dialect of Hindi. There's how many 100 dialects of Hindi? Bihar, there's not one. UP, there's not one. Even in Rajasthan, there are different dialects of Rajasthani. It's all called Hindi. Actually, it's not Hindi. Rajasthani village language, you can't follow. Punjabi, we can't follow. Or Rajasthani village language, Haryanvi. These are almost different languages, but they're very similar to Hindi. So if you learn Hindi, you can communicate, except in Chennai and Tamil Nadu. And even in some places in Kerala and Karnataka and Andhra, people don't speak Hindi at all. And then even in Gujarat, in some villages, they don't know Hindi. Because of this Hindi cinema they learned later on. Otherwise, in remote villages in Kutch and Saurashtra, there's still traditional communities of cowherds and whatnot who never, they really can't speak Hindi. They can understand, but they don't have a habit of speaking. So like that. There's another hand up. Any more question?
And the Sanskrit?
Yeah, so Sanskrit, see, there's 150 words for water, for example. So who will know all those words? And they're only found in the literature. So when you speak, you may not use all of them. You may use jalam, apaha, what's the other one? Jalam is very, apaha is there, niru. So these words are there. So they went into different Indian languages. They took a Sanskrit word, and many, in Hindi, the nouns are all Sanskrit. The names of the people are all Sanskrit. We already were reading Bhagavad Gita and Bhagavatam, and so we already had a familiarity. But to converse, you need the verbs. Karoti, bhavati, like that. Drakshati, pashyati, shrunoti. You need to know these words, and then past tense, future tense, and what is it? Vartaman, present tense. You need past, present, and future. And then it comes by speaking. By hearing and speaking, repeating, you're able to converse, right? Radha Krishnam Pachya Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. So the object of that bhajami, I worship, is Govindam. That's the object of worship. So to know this technically in the mind, it's not easy. We don't think in terms of grammar when we speak English. Or when you speak Creole, right? French Creole, you don't think in terms of, you by practice, you already got it. By practice in the childhood. So mother tongue means the mother teaches the child what her language is. So that's the mother tongue. I mean, someone is Bengali, but they're born in Bombay. Lots of Bengalis in Bombay, but they speak Bengali at home because the mother speaks Bengali with them. Same with the Rajasthanis. All along they spoke this Rajasthani languages, whatever, Marwari, Mewari. There are different dialects in Rajasthan. Or the Haryanvis, they spoke, Haryanvi is actually spoken by farmers. And the other people speak Hindi or Punjabi, or there's a lot of Punjabis in Haryana. A lot of Punjabi. The chief minister of Haryana today is a Punjabi, not a Haryanvi. So, you know, this Yogi Adityanath, who's the chief minister of UP, he's not from UP because UP was divided. Uttarakhand, you know, Haridwar, Rishikesh, and Garhwal was separate, used to be part of UP. He's from that place. He's from Uttarakhand. He's not from UP. But the ashram, his guru's ashram is Gorakhpur. So he was a member of parliament from Gorakhpur. His guru was Yogi, I can't remember his guru's name now. It's not coming in my mind. So he was also member of parliament. So anyway, like that, you know, sometimes in India, you'll find someone who's not from that place, but like in Tamil Nadu, there was M.G. Ramachandran. You might have heard his name, MGR. He died 30 years ago, right? Jayalalitha was his, you know, leading lady in the movies. MGR was an actor. Fact of the matter, he was a Keralite. He wasn't a Tamilian. But what's the difference between a Keralite and a Tamilian? Malayalam is like a hill dialect of Tamil. But the Lipi is different. Lipi is different. The hills are dividing, Kerala and Tamil Nadu are divided by hills.
I see.
Yeah. So it's contiguous area, but they made a political divide because they speak a different language. But it's very similar. Very similar. But the tough languages for us, even though I lived in South India, Telugu is easier because mostly Sanskrit words. Tamil, there are many Sanskrit words in Tamil and Malayalam also. Some, you know, my Sanskrit Guruji who taught me in 1 week, he speaks 14, 15 languages fluently. Converses in those, yeah. Prabhupada was Hindi, Bengali, English, you know. So Bengali, my daughter was in Mayapur for 6 years, so she converses in Bengali like a Bengali. Very good Bengali she speaks because village area, everyone speaks only Bengali. They don't know Hindi well. But because of cinema, they can understand TV and cinema. But in Bengal, everyone speaks Bengali. It's a question of, you know, ruchi, time, effort. You know, I didn't put in effort to learn Telugu. And now I've left there, it's 41 years or 42 years ago. 42.
Okay.
So yeah, if I was in Mauritius, then I would learn French Creole.
Yeah.
I visited 6 times. 6 times.
Okay.
Yeah, 92, and then Sriniketan Prabhu called me in 2007, after 15 years. In 92, I stayed in Phoenix, but I went to the farm, both places for Janmashtami. Then in 2007, I stayed at the farm. Then after that, Mukta Purush kept calling me, but he passed away.
Yeah.
I had invitation to go, but I couldn't go. And last 4.5 years, I'm doing this USA, India, up and down. I'm from here, but I became Indian citizen in 1983. And I have an Indian passport. Now India created this Overseas Citizen of India, OCI. And so I thought that's better to have a US passport. Jasomati Nandan Prabhu had that. Bhakti Charu Maharaj wanted that, but he didn't want to stay a year here. You know, 1 year continuously because he was traveling everywhere. But he had special interest. He had this Florida. I visited now 3 times. his ashram in Florida. And after he passed away, they put me as regional secretary for Ujjain. So I don't interfere. I'm looking after their interests. He developed a wonderful preaching, wonderful temple, very good group of devotees he has. And Bhakti Prem Maharaj is there. He's not interested in preaching in the US. He's interested in preaching in India.
Yeah.
He was Bhakti Chauru Maharaj's right-hand man. He did everything Maharaj said, and he's the most humble person. But his personal ruchi is not in the USA.
Yeah.
Like that. So,
Thank you. We have a Mauritian devotee settled in Finland. He has a question. He raised his hand.
Hare Krishna Das, I see a hand up. Yes.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Das, yes.
You need to unmute, Prabhu. I don't think
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Yes,
This is
Hare
my
Krishna.
humble obeisances. From my humble obeisance to all the devotees. Thank you very much, Prabhuji, for very nice explaining about Prabhupada in San Francisco. I just wanted to know, could you just narrate how the scenario took place for the Yatra? How is shake up the Rath Yatra in San Francisco?
What happened, the story is that Malati, who it was the wife of Sham Sundar, went to a gift shop and she saw these Jagannath deities, small ones, and she had on impulse, nobody told her, she didn't know it was Krishna's Swarup. She purchased the deity, maybe even just one of them, and showed to Prabhupada. He said, "Where did you get this?" So she said, "There's a shop, bring all the three." So they started worshipping Jagannath. He taught them how to do arati. And so that's when Rath Yatra, was started. The Prabhupada was in New York, and then he came to San Francisco. So that was the story, that when he was in San Francisco, by coincidence, Jagannath's deities came. So then he had I think there's this Naranarayan, he's still around, he's like 77 years old. So he made his own Jagannath murtis from wood. He carved his own deities. So those are the bigger size deities that they put on a truck, and the truck went around. That was the first Rath Yatra now in 1966. That's the story.
I came to Surat in 1987. You were there for Rath Yatra.
Okay.
Surat Rath Yatra.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember you very well there at that time. You was president of Surat Temple.
87, I was I was already in Baroda by 87. I was earlier president, 80, 81.
Yeah, it was Baroda, not Surat, sorry, because we were traveling by bus during Sankirtan.
Okay.
And we stopped.
Yeah. I went to Puri Rath Yatra 82 and 84. And then 84 September, I took over Baroda. And I stayed there ever since. And the Rath Yatra was started in 82, but not on that Ashad Shukla Dvitiya, the same day as Puri. But so I attended Baroda 82 and Puri 82. And then Puri 84. And then after that, almost every year, there have been 3-4 years where I've been here in the US. But otherwise, I attended almost every Baroda Rath Yatra since 85 onwards, you can say. And I was organizing it. Now the vice president has taken over. And I call him Kuber Devta. You understand Kubera? Because he brings in the money. But because of this pandemic last year, there was just around the temple in the compound and just on the street in front of the temple. Police commissioner came and he was a devotee. He bowed down to Jagannath. He pulled the cart. But, you know, the police couldn't give permission because of the situation. Now this year looking like the same thing because India is under lockdown in many places. So it's unfortunate, but what to do? So you are not in Mauritius now?
No, Prabhuji, I'm in Finland.
Oh, it's too cold there.
Now it's summer now. Now it's summer.
Yeah, summer here also.
Today was very 25, 28 degrees.
Right?
Very warm.
Okay. How many months of warm weather? I think just like 3 or 4?
Just maybe a couple of months.
Right. Yeah.
Next week will be midsummer. The sun will not set up. It will just stay on the horizon and rise again.
Right. 24 hours
Midsummer.
of 24 hours of light.
Yes.
Ajay Chaitanya Prabhu has his hand up again. Yes, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu. Me again.
No problem. Please, feel free.
So fond of you.
Huh?
He told me that Prabhu Arjun.
Yes.
Arjuna Das.
Right.
He told me that perhaps in 1974, he was in Hyderabad, where he met you.
No, it was 76. 76, maybe 75, but not 74.
Okay.
I think it was 76. He was there at the temple opening Janmashtami, 76, as I recall. Yeah. He spent time in Juhu and some time in Hyderabad. Juhu, Bombay.
He was also acting like the bodyguard of Srila Prabhupada.
Possibly for some time he did that. There was no need, but anyway.
Okay.
They made that, but there was never any threat as such. But they had some security, not professional security, you know.
Yeah, it was a professional.
It was very, because Prabhupada had become world famous. So it was felt he should have some security like that. But today is a different thing, you know. Anyway, religious leaders, generally there's no threat like that. Generally. They call it, yeah, please.
I think it should be late for you now.
No, it's 12:22 in the afternoon. I have to take prasad. Now I take prasad midday. Like I don't eat in the morning. Generally,
I thought you were in India. So you're...
No, I'm in Dallas, Texas in the USA. I came after Janmashtami in the middle of the pandemic. You know, the pandemic time means it had opened up, but it was still pandemic and we were afraid to travel, you know, but we'll travel anyway. And I have a US permanent residency. You know, they call it a green card. You've heard of that. Yeah, so...
Srila Prabhupada also has this green card.
Right. Yeah. So we can stay as long as we want now. We're residents, you know. So, but I'm an Indian citizen. So anyway, we're not sure if we should. We wanted to spend 1 year continuously because India has this OCI scheme. So if you stay here 1 year, then I become eligible to get the US citizenship. And OCI is virtual dual nationality. So you can stay in India as long as you want. Only voting, and voting anyway is, you know, it's a sham, you know. But of course, we voted for BJP, I tell you openly. But in Bengal, we are devotees of Mamata Banerjee, because Mamata Banerjee has given ISKCON land exemption from land ceiling law, not by decree, but in the state assembly, she moved a proposal and to give ISKCON Tourism Corporation, Sri Mayapur Tourism Corporation, which is controlled by ISKCON India Governing Bureau. 750 acres of land exemption. You know, under the law, you could only have 23 acres.
I see.
So ISKCON had 23, BBT had 23, and the rest, they made 40 trusts. Radha Madhav Trust, Radha Govinda Trust, whatever. So all of those merged into the Mayapur Tourism Corporation. And to merge, there were taxes, stamp duty it's called. 50 crores of rupees were saved because she made two provisions. One is this land ceiling and exemption from stamp duty. So the service that Mamata Banerjee has done for ISKCON, no political leader in India ever in the history, 70 years of independent India, did they do so much for ISKCON. So in Gujarat, we're BJP, but in Bengal, we're Trinamool Congress. She did. She was re-elected recently, as you might be aware. Another 5 years for Mamata Banerjee, yeah. So Mayapur is going up, but the TOVP opening will be delayed because of the pandemic. It'll be delayed. You know, everything has been affected. Whole world, as you know.
Yeah. Whole world.
There was something else came in my mind, but went out of my mind.
It's nice to hear from you.
Yeah, this is a nice platform for some satsang and meeting devotees.
A few minutes, Prabhuji, can you talk about the Baroda Yatra?
Yeah, Jasomati Nandan Prabhu was able to get 6 acres of land from the government, which was a part of a village, but the village became part of the city. And the 5.5 lakhs of rupees was the value in 1980. And today it's worth 250, 300 crores.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crores.
Yeah, and 6 acres of land in the middle of the town. And we opened the temple, Radha, Shyam Sundar, Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra, and the Gaurni Tai. That was Krishna Janmashtami 1999. So it's 22 years will be completed.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's one of the most popular temples in Baroda. Famous for prasadam distribution, lot of prasad in the evening. Everyone gets a cup of prasad. And last 2 years, at about 10:30, 10:45 in the morning at the gate, we have a huge gate, 30 feet high and 55 feet wide, entrance gate on the main road. And at the gate, we have a bandara, you know, everyday prasad for about 1,000 people, 700 to 1,000. Every day the menu was changing, like rice and mung beans, not dal, but the whole mung. And then rice and chena and dal makhani type of thing with rice and khichdi kadhi pakora, Punjabi type of pakora or UP wala. Even though Gujarat, in the kadhi they put sugar. But we don't put sugar, and they don't put haldi, much haldi, little haldi. And in north, they put more haldi. And Amavasya and Purnima, puri and sabji and halava. So there is one wealthy supporter who pays for all these things.
Oh.
He's an industrialist, Agarwal caste from Haryana. But three brothers live in Baroda, 2 in Delhi. And they have chemical industries and they're exporters, and they give like 10 lakhs a month to the temple. So that's not cash, no cash. But 125 cows have to eat, and 50 devotees have to eat. So all the grains, ghee, oil, and then for the bandara, and so those expenditures we don't face. So we do have some municipal tax and electricity, gas, water, these things. But gas bill, because of this cooking, that's high. We have a gas pipeline and we get the bottles of gas, both. We have pipeline gas from the municipal authority. So that's there.
We have biogas also?
No, it didn't work. We put it, but it didn't work. We took it out.
Yeah, also. Promotion tried.
Yeah.
It did not work.
No. Maybe there's a better system than the system that was a long time ago. We put that. I mean, it worked for a little while, but not for long. Not for a long period, no. And solar panels, talk was there, but they were never put. They were never. Government gives some subsidy, but you still have to pay some money. But we have a guest house with 25 guest rooms. So ISKCON in India has at least 10 temples with good guest facilities. But Vrindavan is unfortunately not up to the Mayapur, 900 rooms, 900 guest rooms.
Yeah,
and at the festival, you can't get, you have to book in advance. They're making more. The more rooms will come up in Mayapur. The land is not the problem. In Vrindavan, they don't have land and it's very expensive. When it was cheap, nobody thought to buy. And there was no unity, that type of economic. Very sorry. It's unfortunate that ISKCON Vrindavan didn't get a boost like Mayapur got. Mayapur got a boost from Northern Europe BBT money in the 1990s. A lot of money came from BBT. That's how they could purchase all the 700 acres of land.
Oh, I see.
They got money from Europe. Local donation wouldn't have covered, that type of expenditure. 700 acres of land. So
even when Srila Prabhupada was constructing the three temples.
Yeah, see, Prabhupada had limited funds. He had limited funds. ISKCON is much bigger now than it was at the time of Prabhupada.
Oh, yeah.
So can we, I think the time is up to end the program.
Yeah, we can call the host.
I mean, if you want me to come back, but I think maybe an hour and a half is a bit long. It could be a little, yeah.
Sir, Hare Krishna, we would like to thank His Grace Ambassador Prabhu for having spent some time to be with us in Mauritius today. Right, I would like to highlight the fact that we got to know about Prabhu by His Grace Ajay Chaitanya Prabhu, who kept on mentioning about Ambassador Prabhu. So even if it wasn't his birthday, we decided to give him a gift by contacting you to come to this forum because he's a main organizer for celebrating Srila Prabhupada 125 years. Right, but ultimately, the whole yatra, we end up having a gift along with Ajay Chaitanya Prabhu because you are an expert in so many fields, Prabhu, like many languages, and in all your years of ISKCON, you have so much experience, and you made us realize in this session that the new generation, we got everything on the silver plate, but it wasn't always that easy for every ISKCON members, and especially not for the pioneers. So we are grateful to have your precious association with us in Mauritius today. And also we wish to have you in many, many more sessions in the near future. I'm sure we will be able to organize that, right? So thank you so much, Ambassador Prabhu. I know it's quite late at your end as well.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup.
And now we would like to thank our dear participants who have stayed with us this evening and have been connected. And we would like to invite you for next week's session. where we will be having our three speakers. We will start with, on Monday, we will have His Grace Narayan Prabhu, who will be speaking about chapter 4. And then on Thursday, we will have Narasimhananda Prabhu from South Africa. He will be speaking on chapter 5, followed by His Grace Srivas Das Vanachari Prabhu from Ghana, and he will be speaking about chapter 6. Also, we have a gentle reminder for all the devotees in Mauritius that we have a date limit, like the 21st of June, to submit our offering to the Pan-African Vyasa Puja, so that we will be able to have our offering put in the offering book. So now, to end up the session, devotees, we will chant one Hare Krishna Mahamantra together, followed by our obeisances to the assembled devotees. So please, everyone, join me together.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vansha kalpatarubhyascha, kripa sindhubhyeva cha, patitanam pavanebhyo, vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Haribol. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. Have a
हो गया ओ ये नहीं हुआ इंटरनेट अभी हो रहा है इंटरनेट को बंद in stream. Okay, those who are watching here, thank you very much. It was a group of devotees in Mauritius via Zoom, and you heard our talk. You may not have been able to hear them clearly, so forgive me for that. Hare Krishna.